Ray, I'll give you the countdown.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, we are live on Facebook, and Ray, you can start in 1, 2, 3.
Good morning and welcome everybody to the Greater New Haven Chamber of Commerce webinar this morning. My name is Ray Andrewson. I'm Executive Director of the Quinnipiac Chamber of Commerce, our affiliate chamber based in Wallingford and North Haven, and of course, affiliated with the Greater New Haven Chamber of Commerce. We'll be getting underway in just a minute or two. Our topic today for our webinar, what does Pride mean to me? Pride Day today, June 28th, 2021. Beginning with our guests will be introduced, and we'll start our webinar in just a couple of minutes. Thank you for joining us. Welcome everybody. Those of you who are joining us on Facebook, or if you're streaming this webinar today, I'm Ray Andrewson with the Quinnipiac Chamber of Commerce. Our president, Garrett Sheehan, is off today. I will be substituting for Garrett. Our topic, what does Pride mean to me? Pride Day 2021, this June 28th. I will be getting going with our webinar in just a matter of a minute or two. Thanks for joining us. I'll be with you in just a moment. Thank you. We'll be starting in just 30 seconds, just a minute or two. From now, we'll introduce our guests. Welcome for those of you who are joining us at this moment. It's 10 o'clock. It's time for our webinar with the Greater New Haven Chamber of Commerce. Our topic today, what does Pride mean to me? Pride Day 2021, this June 28th, 2021. We'll begin very, very shortly. Good morning, everybody, and welcome. My name is Ray Andrewson. I am the Executive Director of the Quinnipiac Chamber of Commerce, the affiliate Chamber of Commerce with the Greater New Haven Chamber of Commerce. Welcome on this Monday, June 28th, 2021, to our webinar. This being June, Pride Month. Our topic today, what does Pride mean to me? Pride Day 2021. And we will have a comprehensive discussion with 4 of our panelists today about what Pride means to them, but also what it means to business in Greater New Haven and beyond. We'll also hear in just a moment from Cecil Austin, who is the co-chair of the Diversity and Inclusion Council with the Greater New Haven Chamber of Commerce. What I'd like to do right now is thank some of our people who make it possible here at the Greater New Haven Chamber of Commerce to bring you this kind of programming. We'd like to thank our multitude of premier investors. And please note all of their names that are here on this slide. They help make things possible. Our key investors as well, and you can see all of the names that are presented right here. And of course, our principal investors, other investors who certainly make everything possible for us here at the Greater New Haven Chamber of Commerce. And do note their beautiful logos, of which there are many here today. So our topic, and why are we here? What does Pride mean to me? This is an historic day not just to the community of Pride, to the LGBTQI IA plus communities, but also to all of us, all 330 million Americans. Back on this date in 1969, there was the start of the Stonewall Uprising in New York City in the early morning hours. And why did it happen? In the 1960s, it was illegal to express yourself in a form of affection, a love with anyone. It was against the law, in fact, and a police raid on the Stonewall Inn on Christopher Street in the Village neighborhood, Greenwich Village neighborhood, West Village in New York City, culminated in 3 days of uprising. They had had enough. And today we're going to discuss the historical implications of that and the tremendous strides and progress, but much still needing to be done in the years ahead. What I'd like to do at this point is call in, if I could, Cecil Austin. Cecil is the owner of C&H Insurance. He is the co-chair of the Greater New Haven Chamber of Commerce Diversity and Inclusion Council. And Cecil, this is an historic day, June 28th, the anniversary of Stonewall during Pride Month. And I know the Diversity Inclusion Council is very proud to be able to present this webinar.
Yeah, thanks, Ray. Yeah, I just wanted to take this time to really thank everyone who's participating in today's event for coming on and sharing their stories and being part of this discussion on behalf of the Diversity and Inclusion Council, as well as being the owner of C&H Insurance and sponsor of the D&I, Diversity and Inclusion Council. Taken from a business perspective, I'm very proud to have my business associated with today's discussion. As you said, it is a very big, event and very important topic that we're discussing today. And again, I'd just like to take this time to thank everyone who's participating, everyone who's also taking time to listen to this discussion and put in their own comments. And I'll give it back to you, Ray. Thanks.
Great. All right, Cecil. Thank you for the work you do here at the Greater New Haven Chamber of Commerce with our council as well. Time to introduce our panelists. We're going to have a wide-ranging discussion, a lot of topics to consider. First, I'd like to bring in Bruno Baguetta, and Bruno is the Marketing Communications Director for Market New Haven. Bruno, welcome. It's great to have you be with us here this morning, and thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Good to have you here too. And Rick Callahan, he's the founder and CEO of Creative Advertising. And Rick, thank you again for being with us here this morning on this panel.
Absolutely. Good morning, Ray.
Good morning to you. Also, the Chief Compliance Officer from Marrakech Inc., Marrakech Incorporated, is Denise Kennedy, who is joining us as well this morning. Denise, hello to you.
Good morning. Thank you for having me be a part of this discussion. And it's so cool that it's actually happening on the actual anniversary date, which make it more exciting.
Absolutely, June 28th. Thank you so much. And also the founder and creative director of Strange Ways, joining us this morning too, is Alex DeCoulis. And Alex, thanks again so much. We're grateful for you being with us here today.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me as well.
Great. Now, questions, lots of it. Let's talk about history. Denise, you just talked about it. I'd like to start, Bruno, actually with you, if I can. This is an historic date, and it's an anniversary. Earlier this month, Juneteenth became a national holiday, June 19th. This is another date to mark for a lot of people in communities all across the country. So, Bruno, if you can perhaps give your perspective on June 28th and its historic impact.
Sure. So for me, at least, it really was a watershed moment. If you think about it, it really started to bring to the surface that folks are equal no matter gender, race, color of skin, ethnicity, and everyone deserves that same baseline of rights. People deserved the right to gather, celebrate, and really be with folks like themselves. And I think that in the years following, it really sort of made, if you think about New York City today, this is really hard to reconcile for 1969 because it's such a diverse place, right? There's so many different facets to the city. And I lived in New York for 4 years and I know all aspects of it. And it's, it's really jarring to me to think that this was the way back then. But, as I said to you when we had met last week, it almost feels like sometimes Stonewall, while referenced, is forgotten about. And I think that some younger generations don't really understand the pain and all that those men went through to sort of take a stance to allow us to be where we are today. They paved the way. So it's sort of looking back to those who put themselves out on the line for something that they believed in.
Yeah, that's excellent points you raised. Rick Callahan too. If you can sort of put your perspective on the day, this historic day.
Yeah, sure. I think one thing I'd like to recognize is the amount of work of fighting for equality in this community in particular, prior to Stonewall, leading up to Stonewall, and since, right? I think we get to currently benefit from all the work of all those people of color, male, female, trans, non-binary, et cetera. Stonewall being a pivotal moment for sure, especially as we tell a story of our history here, but to recognize the hard work prior to and leading up to that moment and all through, now and onward, I think it's important to recognize all of that for sure.
Yeah, and work to be done too. Denise Kennedy, your perspective on today?
So it's really humbling to think about the trailblazers who were brave enough to take a stance and say enough is enough. So people like me, I identify as a lesbian woman, could walk down the street and hold hands with my wife and not be jailed for it, right? So just being able to have the freedom and the liberation to live out loud and proud because of that historic moment and other moments beforehand, but that was the pivotal moment that we are all most familiar with, right? Just being able to be authentic and live your truth and benefit from the sacrifice and the struggle of the people who came before us in this movement.
A deep struggle. And Alex DeCoulis too, maybe share with us a couple of your thoughts too.
Sure, yeah. I mean, for me, it's just a reminder to fight. I think as someone who wasn't around when it happened, as maybe a younger person, people maybe don't think about the significance, or I know as Pride becomes more accepted and queer people become more accepted, people are like, well, why do you even have Pride Month? And it's because if we continue to speak up and continue to fight for our rights and continue to make our voices heard, we will always be, welcome at the table, or have our rights there for us and not be taken away. So for me, it's a reminder to keep speaking up.
Great. Well, now let's take a little tour if we can. I want to go backwards, starting with you, Alex, if we can, and just find out what you do. I mean, This is the Greater New Haven Chamber of Commerce and the Quinnipiac Chamber of Commerce. We're about business promotion, and we're here to do a lot of that in the next hour as well. So let's give us a little bit of a tour through Strange Ways. Let's take us on a tour.
Yeah, so my company's called Strange Ways, 2 words. We're in New Haven in the Westville neighborhood, but we also have a very large online shop. We have a very large social media following, a large Instagram following. I started out online. I have a graphic design background, so I kind of just, have used those skills to get that going. And we sell all over the country is my point of mentioning that. But we have our storefront and our headquarters where we ship everything out of in New Haven at the storefront. We're technically an artist shop, but we specialize in pins and patches. So if you want to customize your jacket, add something to your backpack, it's really about self-expression for the customers. For the artists, it's getting the work out there in an affordable way. For the customers, it is self-expression and, kind of feeling like you can relate to something. We offer a lot of items that maybe you wouldn't find I know you won't find at mall stores and other places. We focus on LGBTQ makers. We focus on women makers. I've had a more asserted effort to focus on BIPOC makers as well. But basically just people that aren't always represented. You can buy a little pin or a patch. We also have t-shirts, we have candles, we have soap, all this other sort of fun stuff that smaller brands are making, independent artists are making, and hopefully you can find a bit of yourself in it, or at least just want to support someone that's trying to make their dream alive, just making what they feel passionate about, and hopefully can have a business off of that.
So Denise, Rick, and Bruno, I'm going to ask you a similar question I just asked Alex, but following up on that, it's self-expression, but also sort of in an era now, the last couple of years, we're expanding into freedom of expression. So define what freedom of expression means, particularly to artists. And that question goes to you, Alex.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I thought you were passing it on. What does self-expression, sorry, give me one sentence, self-expression.
Sure. Well, in terms of, you mentioned self-expression, but self-expression is freedom of expression.
Mm-hmm.
And we're entering into a period where, as we were talking about the history over a 52-year period to today, originally there wasn't a lot of freedom associated with expression. Now in the self-expression, the accompanying freedom of expression. And what a difference that actually makes.
I mean, it's actually, I think it makes people feel validated. I think being able to express yourself makes people feel like they belong. You know, I say that Strange Ways is a safe space, and some people say that's like such a, you know, like pandering word, but people can come in who are trans and wear whatever they want. You can come in with your partner holding hands and do whatever, you know, not do whatever you want, but you can feel comfortable shopping and no one's going to look at you weird. And you can also hopefully find something that you can buy and now wear and maybe bring that out into the world a little bit. And, you know, again, if you don't express yourself or say something, as I was trying to say before, I think people kind of gloss over you and think it's not important, but I don't know. I like saying that I'm gay. I like saying that I'm queer. And if me just wearing a little pin that might say that, if someone's offended by that, like, then that is the problem, you know, that shouldn't be an issue. So I think being able to express yourself makes you feel like a validated person. It makes you feel like a real person that, you know, belongs in the rest of the world.
I want to get back to the topic of safe spaces and feeling safe, shopping and in the workplace, and raising, you know, on your important points. Denise, I want to ask you a question about Marrakech in terms of expression as well. I mean, Marrakech was founded very roughly around the time of the Stonewall Uprising, around 1970 and 71. And you see beauty and miracles in terms of people who have intellectual disabilities or differently abled. In your work, describe your workplace at Marrakech.
So we are excited. Actually, this year we are celebrating our 50th anniversary. So 50 years of servicing our community and people with intellectual and other disabilities is something we're really passionate about, right? So we don't just walk the walk. We talk the walk. So when you come into our main office, for instance, you'll see a pride flag hanging on the wall. One of our staff was quoted as saying when they met with the president and CEO, she had a pride flag and a cup on her desk, and he knew he was at the right place. And we start at the very ground level. It starts with our recruitment effort, right? So we post our positions and diversity jobs, and they scrape to alllgbt.com. We've also taken an ad out in the Centerline newspaper, which is published by the New Haven Pride Center. We have people that we support who are trans, gay, bisexual. We have staff who are trans, gay, bisexual. So we're very welcoming. And if, you know, we have a culture, it's not that we do it just because we have to meet a funding source requirement. It is who we are. And during our first week of new hire training, our employees go through training on culture matters, and the LGBTQIA community is highlighted in that training. And we have had to resend some job offers during that training when we discover that people are just not in line with our values. And that's okay, because we want to know early on before we send people out to work with our individuals and our coworkers. We want everyone to feel safe and valued and respected here in the workplace.
Yeah. And that's important, that kind of respect. And Marrakech, of course, has been integral in the Greater New Haven Chamber of Commerce as well. So thank you so much for those thoughts. And Rick Callahan, you're in the advertising world as founder and CEO of Creative, and advertising is messaging. And tell us a little bit about what Creative does. And you're a very contemporized and on it company.
Sure. Yeah. So Creative is my company. So I started back in 2006, different company name, 2010 became Creative. Creative is a full service creative agency, but we focus mostly on brand strategy and marketing. So with our clients, we help them to really identify their core values to really position them in the market space. And I think there's some alignment there with Pride as far as doing some introspection and being able to figure out really what drives you, what motivates you, and to be able to communicate those effectively to different markets or people around you, right? So that's what Creative essentially does. To touch on advertising and communications, I think there's been significant movement over the last several years, at least for sure, of corporations, larger entities, more publicly coming forward and speaking on behalf of and alongside LGBTQ communities. You know, I think that's mostly to follow the wave of mainstream acceptance, to be honest, to be a little candid there. Some of it may be a marketing stunt. Some of it may be very authentic and sincere. I think a lot of members of the community can kind of sense some of that. My job and my company is to help entities of all sizes, businesses small and large, to be as authentic and vulnerable as possible to speak to these matters when relevant and all that.
Well, we'll talk also about the issue of cultural appropriation, because you mentioned there may be an insincerity, and as a marketer and an advertising expert, I think we want to go back to that and develop that theme a little bit more. But also marketing the city of New Haven, Bruno Baguetta, you are right in the center of it with Market New Haven and getting the word out about our beautiful Elm City. So you in terms of marketing and getting the messaging right, let's talk a little bit about what you do at Market New Haven.
Sure. So Market New Haven was founded 21 years ago as the downtown New Haven destination marketing entity. Our mission was to promote downtown New Haven as a place with something for everyone by bringing up the fixed assets of dining, culture, shopping, events, entertainment, all in this walkable, manageable downtown area. You know, when the organization was started, it was actually born out of a perception study done by the Quinnipiac Polling Institute. Let's take it back to Quinnipiac, right? And the perceptions of New Haven were very negative, and it didn't really align with the reality of what was happening downtown, because downtown was evolving. There was this renaissance happening. Yale made a significant investment in and around Chapel Street and College Street and Broadway and the redevelopment. All of the dining was really at the forefront in New Haven before, you know, the suburbs started getting more sophisticated with their dining. But really, New Haven really was this cultural mecca for everything that you wanted to do. So we needed to tell the story. So this organization was founded to be objective, to hold the interests of downtown firsthand and really tell that story locally through advertising and nationally through PR. And we've grown and evolved over the years, and we're still around today telling that story. And we're really proud of all the changes that have happened in and around downtown.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned the Quinnipiac University poll and also the challenges back in the 1990s. I think many of us can recall times in New Haven when things weren't going very well, and the downtown was struggling, the Schubert was struggling, theaters were struggling, and there was some bad national press as well. And in the last 20 to 25 years, the city has really, in many ways, the downtown has had a pop and an energy challenged by COVID this year. And I think that's certainly, from your perspective, Bruno, that's been a tough thing for Market New Haven the last year, is trying to encourage people to come in during a compromised time.
Well, you know, I think for downtown has always been sort of the center. It's always been the focus. You know, I think that during COVID, a lot of our quote unquote neighbors were relegated to working from home. So the workers that would come in and support the, you know, the restaurants, the dry cleaners, the shoe cobbler, whoever, weren't there. They weren't built in. The neighborhoods around downtown were at an advantage because their neighbors were home and they were there supporting those businesses in that area. And downtown, for the first time in my 21 years, was a little fractured, right? It was a little bruised. So together with the shops at Yale and Town Green, we came up with all sorts of innovative activations, if you will, to encourage folks to come in and support local businesses in a safe and measured way. And we just kept investing in awareness and messaging and programs to help support and bolster restaurants and retailers, which were the only businesses really open during that time. And we're seeing an uptick now. Our footfall numbers in and around downtown are steadily increasing. The weekends are doing really well for restaurants. Retailers are still struggling a little bit So, we're trying to come up with some creative promotions to help sustain them, but we're on a slow rise back.
Great. Well, that's good news. And we're hoping, all of us, that things come back to where we were feeling that energy level year or two ago, because we know that magic is there. For those of you who are joining us a little bit late, welcome to our webinar, the Greater New Haven Chamber of Commerce. I'm Ray Andrewson. I'm Executive Director of the Quinnipiac Chamber of Commerce, affiliate chamber, filling in for our vacationing, Garrett Sheehan, our President and CEO. And our topic, what does pride mean to me on this Pride Day, this historic day, June 28th, 2021. And our guest, Bruno Baguetta from Marketing Communications Director, Market New Haven, Rick Callahan, who's the founder and CEO of Creative Advertising, Denise Kennedy, Chief Compliance Officer from Marrakech, Inc., and also Alex Takulis from his Westfield shop, founder and creative director of Strange Ways. So Alex, I'm not going to direct this to you this time specifically, and we're going to sort of open it up to all.
I'll listen this time.
There you go. That's a good thing to do when we're in conversation. But I want to develop this issue of safety, because you brought it up, safe spaces. And that sounds almost a cliche, I think. Where do we feel safe, free to express, be ourselves? And that's so critical. Talk about, all of you, if you can, what a safe space really means. It means welcoming, comfort level. Develop that thought a little further. Alex, I am going to go back to you, and we'll start with you, and then you all jump on in.
I think I can just relate to personal experiences when it comes to that. And as a gay man, being able to hold my boyfriend's hand and not feeling like people are going to stare at me or treat me differently, just something as basic and simple as that. There are places where you go and I do get weird looks about it. And there are places in public where you walk down the street and yeah, people say stuff to you. And so I kind of want to go back to this thing of like, people, I think sometimes say like, why do we still have pride? Why do we, why do people care anymore? I'm like, yeah, well, if you talk to a gay person or a queer person or lesbian or a trans person, like, yeah, we still get stuff said to us. So me just knowing that I can relax in a restaurant or a store, that to me makes me feel safe.
Yeah. So Bruno, Rick, Denise, weigh in with your thoughts. Jump in.
I think it's also about knowing where you are and kind of editing yourself to that situation. You always have to have your guard up, but I think for me at least, I've noticed a shift where I am a little more guarded the past few years, only because of all of this craziness in the world, and anyone's a moving target. And I feel like we've gone backwards a little bit in terms of progression, and no one wants to be forced back into the proverbial closet, but it's all about sort of editing yourself, but also putting yourself in situations where you are in that safe space, being with your friends, your family, going to places that are accepting, and being around others like you. And I think that, that creating that safe space and creating those boundaries is really important.
Yeah.
I would, I would want to just jump in. First thing I want to say is, Alex, I've been to Strange Ways more than a few times, and that is a very welcoming environment. So whatever you're doing there creates a safe space. I don't know what that is. It's intangible. There are some visual markers, of course, but it's definitely a space you walk in, you feel very welcome, from the things you see around you to the people there that are engaging with you or not. And then you're welcome. And then an anecdote I want to share. So a couple years back, I think it was the 50th anniversary of Pride and all that. I was down in DC with my partner, and we had the opportunity to march in the march, the Pride Parade. My first time doing that, very excited, right? And I felt very just overcome with joy and love, just looking around. And I could tell there were straight families there. There were LGBTQ people you can't tell what made the case may be, right? It was just beautiful. But in a moment's notice, people thought there might have been an active shooter in this area. We were in the staging area, lining up with the float to go into the main march. And everybody started running towards us, screaming and panicked. You could just see the sheer fear just filling everyone's faces. And we didn't know what was real or not. We just ran for our lives, right? And to go from that one end of feeling love and welcome and joy to literally running for your life as far as you know, it just shows that there's a deep-rooted fear and risk of being authentically yourself. And while that was not a real situation, it was somebody thought there was an active shooter because they heard a lot of bang and they started running. It went from there. Just that dynamic is something that I think really speaks to the kind of world we're in. I think when people say, why do we still need pride? Well, the authentic experience is we're still hiding, right? We still have safe spaces we have to hide in to be ourselves. And while we can come out, while I can hold my partner's hand, there is this often sense of, filtering and censoring. And until every person feels they don't have a sense of themselves, we have work to do,
Good point, Denise.
So just to piggyback off of a little bit of what Rick said, I remember when I attended my first Pride event ever, I felt so liberated and so safe. And I felt like I was in an environment with people who were like me or people who supported people like me. And it was really awesome. But you can't have Pride events every day, right? So you live in the real world. And now I'm very mindful of when I'm being accepted or just tolerated. And it's a big difference to feel accepted versus tolerated. So I try to surround myself with people who are like minded and people who are not accepting and just tolerating or just against me as a person. I just try to stay away from situations like that. But I definitely feel safe in my home environment. I feel safe in my work environment. I feel safe with my friends. I feel safe with some of the organizations I partner with. So I do have those moments where I can be authentic and live myself out loud and proud.
Thank you for all sharing, by the way, in your comments, because this is an evolution over a period of time, and safety and feeling like you can be yourself is such a key part of it. I want to touch on something in terms of a little bit as it relates to business and the economy, but it really does relate to validity, to being validated. We mentioned this June 28th as the anniversary of the Stonewall Uprising at the Stonewall Inn in Greenwich Village, but now we go back to June 26th, 2015, and the Supreme Court decision legalizing same-sex marriage. And what I think we have to look at is how that's created wealth, because now you have legal rights allowing you to be able to visit your partner, you visit your wife or husband in a hospital room, that you can share benefits in the workplace, that there are legal entitlements, and also what marriage does bring with shared assets is economic stability. So Denise, let me start with you if I can. That was an historic decision on that day. It was the last day of the International Festival. I remember that a lot of whooping and hollering on the New Haven Green that day when the news was breaking. So it does make a difference. I mean, you can actually build a family.
Right, it does. Before same-sex marriage became legal, you can spend a whole lifetime with your partner. And if your partner was to fall ill and medical decisions needed to be made, that wasn't left up to the partner. The partner was often invisible, and it was the next of kin would make those type of decisions. You mentioned, now I'm on my wife's medical insurance, and so I'm protected if I need to get health care. I have coverage. I read an article a few weeks ago that said in 2019, the adult LGBT community had a global combined income power of $3.7 trillion. Which is a lot. Like that's definitely contributing to the economy. So I think we've made a lot of strides in the area of equity when it comes to marriage. I'm not invisible anymore. I can make decisions on behalf of my spouse. I can go on her medical. We can file our taxes together, married filing jointly. So those are some great strides that we've made in that area.
So as soon as you mentioned over $3 trillion, I saw three other panelists' heads start to nod like this. So pick up on that. I mean, that's like economic firepower right there. Rick, I'll start with you.
Yeah, I'm not sure what to say about that, to be honest. I do know that there are some stereotypes that are out there of the queer community in general. dual income, no kids being a thing in the marketing and advertising world. I don't like to refer to that, but I've heard of it a lot in the marketing realm as far as there's economic power there, right? And to have it recognized at least of some form of equality, then, maybe there's a little bit of more equity to share around, so.
Yeah. Equity and dollars means a lot. Alex can't come into your store if you don't have dollars, right?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say that we market exclusively to the LGBTQ community, but I think that at least for me as a business owner, they make up a large portion of our customers, and I appreciate that. But I'm also one of those people, so I think it feels very, genuine and natural. And if anything, I'm trying to give people a platform that maybe wouldn't be carried in other stores. But going off of that, I mean, I do wonder, with this whole Pride Month being such a big thing now, is it only because queer people have a bunch of money, so might as well advertise to them? You can't help but think about, why are all of a sudden are we, so accepted? I actually brought this up to a Black friend where I'm like, so like, how come there's not like a Black Pride Month? And they're like advertising all this stuff to like, Black people and Black products and like, pro Black stuff. And they're like, well, maybe there has something to do with, the economic power of the queer community and the rainbows, and it's so much more acceptable. And I just had to bring that up because I've thought about that too. I feel weird being marketed to so much when there's other people that aren't. So I think it's definitely part of our buying power.
I think that the buying power of the queer community has always been recognized. It's sort of like the double income, no kids model. If you think about it, right? There's more disposable income. You're not, but now, with gay couples having kids and families, that's going to change a little bit too. I do think that some of the corporate marketing in and around June is a little over the top. They should amortize that over the year. You can't walk into any store without like a little pop-up display of like rainbows and butterflies. And it seems to me a little too much, right? It's boom in your face and it goes away, right? And, I was shopping for cards the other day, and we'll bring this back to appropriation. And there was a card that just said yes on it. And I kept thinking to myself, what is this doing in a card store right now? Like, why is this on a card? Who's buying this for someone, right? And it's just like taking pieces of queer culture too and assimilating it to mainstream. And, I think RuPaul's Drag Race has a lot to do with that anyways. But, I just think that at the end of the day, like, come tomorrow, July 1st, it'll all be gone. It's sort of like Disney and Christmas, right? Halloween's over and it's Christmas the next day. It's that same sort of thinking. I would really like to see corporate America just really bring that out throughout the year, maybe do pockets and invest, and maybe not do all this queer focused merchandise. I don't think everyone's wearing rainbow flags and little rompers, outside of June. I don't know. That's just my personal opinion.
So the other 11 months of the year, spread it out. So I want to welcome all of you who are viewing this to submit any questions if you'd like in our chat room, and we'll get to your questions as well. We continue to have our conversation with Rick, Denise, Alex, and Bruno. I want to actually sort of play off that, Bruno, if I might, the difference between incorporation and co-opting. So if you feel in a way co-opted, that there's a lack of genuine sincerity in the marketing approach, how do you, and you're doing this with Market New Haven, how do you stay genuine, authentic, sincere, and welcoming, but not co-opting? You understand my question?
Yeah, well, you're talking about market segmentation, right?
Yeah.
Essentially, you're segmenting gay people out in the month of June. You're sort of targeting them based on their geolocation, their interests. You're feeding them all sorts of ads and everything. And again, I think going back to being authentic and your true self, I mean, it's all about, at the end of the day, we're all consumers. It doesn't matter what race you are, what gender you are, what your sexual orientation is. We all have certain needs for goods and services, and we're going to tap into those needs when we need them. But, it's sort of like when the Barilla pasta guy made some comments about, gay people. Everyone started, I'm never eating Barilla pasta again. or, you know, the whole Chick-fil-A mentality. I've eaten Chick-fil-A. I enjoy Chick-fil-A. I get slapped on the wrist all the time. Like, why are you eating there? I'm like, I like the chicken. I mean, so again, there are parameters, I think, but again, you know, I don't need to see it in my face at Target. It's just, it feels over the top there. It doesn't feel authentic. But if I'm downtown and I see a window at Claire's Cornucopia, where I know Claire is a big cheerleader for LGBTQ plus people, that's authentic to me. When I see a flag outside of a business, that's authentic to me. If I see a rainbow flag sticker in the window, that's authentic to me. That means it's a safe space. So that's how I would answer that question.
So the issue of authenticity is important. Denise, let me ask you too. That, I guess, in terms of being welcome on a storefront, being welcome on a website, how do you feel welcome?
Well, it has to be reflective of who I am, and I have to have an interest in going in those type of spaces, right? So if I see an advertisement, and to this point, like, it doesn't have to be just in the month of June. Like, our Pride flag is hanging in our lobby all year long. The flag that's on my CEO's desk is on her desk all year long. It's not just for the month of June. We're celebrating that we're accepting, and we're for the LGBTQI community, right? So this is authentic. This is who we are. So if you create those spaces, like you said, all year long, and it's not just in the month of June, let's just put up the flag in June. Let's just talk about it in June. Then you create that safe space because you're authentic. People know this is who you are as part of your core value, and it's not just a show for the month of June.
So
I would like to jump on that too, if I can. So Denise, you just mentioned core values, which is like, that's, you know, music to my ears hearing those words. So you can tell when an organization of any size is being sincere and authentic, because if it seems to be, Bruno used the word in your face for a short period of time, there's probably some insincerity there, right? It's probably more of just a stunt at some level. Not to say that there isn't some authenticity of a decision way back in, you know, months before of a group coming together trying to decide, should we do this, should we not, someone fighting for it. But when there's something that's baked into the core essence and core values of an organization that has to do with standing up for those who don't have the platforms to speak for themselves, to put out either imagery that relates to certain segments of the population or certain language that they can use to speak to that community throughout the year and beyond, not just a certain week or month, but consistently speak to those core values and speak at a level that resonates emotionally and deeply with your target audiences, then there's integrity to what they're doing, right? And Alex, that's what I think it is you're doing in your space, right? When you go there, everything you're looking at, even if it's not about anything LGBTQ, I think it's like pins probably for like pizza in New Haven, right? Like I can represent myself there if I'm a straight dude walking in, buying that pin. I like pizza in New Haven, right? Pride, different kind of pride, but pride. And that just shows that Alex is being as authentic and vulnerable and real in all his decisions. And if he's not creating the artwork, he's working with artists who are, you know, who may not normally have the platform. And I think that's a prime example of, you know, working with those core values and being consistent, having integrity and letting all the actions speak for it, and not just, look, we're being fabulous and rainbowy and shiny during June, you know?
Right, just to touch a little bit on that too. And we also have our Black Lives Matter flags, and we also celebrate Spanish Heritage Month. This is just who we are. It's not something that we decide to, you know, we want to check a box off. This is embedded in our core values as an organization. We have an individual that we support who is a member of the trans community, and our staff took this person to get a professional photo shoot. They never had pictures of them with their makeup and their dress and looking absolutely stunning. So now our staff supported this individual. She had a professional photo shoot done, and now she has a photo album of who she is, and this is how she identifies. And this is just the core values and the expectations we have from all of our individuals working for us and supporting our people.
And I think when you have that level, sorry, real quick, when you have that level, Denise, of like sincerity and what actions are being taken and supporting those around you, it grows organically, right? People will talk about it for you. You don't have to go, look at us, we're amazing, we do this thing, especially during a certain month because you're supposed to. It's just authentic. It comes from a place of altruism, and there's something real there, you know?
Alex, you were going to make a point.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think that being genuine is really what it comes down to. I think some of us have touched upon that. And I think consumers are smart, especially nowadays with the internet and research and seeing what companies or businesses people donate to or what they actually support outside of their product. You know, you can find stuff out really easily. And I think just being genuine is very valuable as a consumer. I mean, for me, if I see a rainbow sticker on someone's door all year round, that to me is genuine versus, yeah, wave a pride flag during Pride. Like that's the big difference to me. And I just know it's something that I think about constantly. I mean, my customer is very questionable, or like questioning, I should say. They are very inquisitive. You know, all the Black Lives Matter stuff we carry is made by a Black person or is donated to a Black Lives Matter organization, because they will come up to me and say, did a Black person make this? So not only do I want to be accountable anyways, but I think that to give credit to, you know, the customer that at least Strangeways has manifested, you know, I won't even take credit for it. Like people come in and they're like, did a queer person make this? This says like something about, you know, drag queens. Like, is this related? Is this like a gay man make this? Did a drag queen make this? Like, they'll ask me these questions. Did a woman make this feminist product? And I'm like, most of the time, yes. We very much try to be authentic in that, because otherwise it's like just pandering and trying to make money. And I think that in any business, any big corporation, any small business, people can tell when you're just trying to make a buck and not actually trying to benefit these marginalized people and communities.
Well, as it was said to me by a friend, we're really in the business of friend raising. It's not just fundraising, and that's part of the authenticity is sort of getting another person and understanding them and making friends. So on that note of making friends, how do we create a more friendly business environment in your vision, LGBTQIA+ communities here, in an era when we're understanding more about ourselves and the complexity of what makes us tick? There's a lot to us. We don't think necessarily in a binary world anymore of male, female, black, white. We're kind of on a spectrum in some respects. So how do we engage and develop that trust? And Alex, go right back to you, start with you.
Sure, I think it's ever evolving. You know, just talking about non-binary stuff, I tell my employees to try to use gender neutral language when they're saying hi to customers. It's a small thing, but, you know, saying men, women, guys, stuff like that, you know, it's just something to think about, you know. And I always say, if you happen to use the wrong word or identify someone wrong, just listen to the person and then be respectful and then say, oh, I'm so sorry. And then just like correctly identify them. So even just welcoming customers to the store is something that we've thought about, or I've thought about. And I think that that's great. Like, I don't know, I think some people would be like, oh, like, why do we have to do this? And you're like, well, if someone walked in and someone, like you said, my name is, you know, Donald, and you called them Bob, they'd be like, well, it's not my name. Like, you just don't call someone that's something that they're not. Like, it's not hard to do. It's just being respectful. So just specifically talking about, like, you know, kind of gender pronouns and things like that. That's one thing I can speak about. And it is something that has evolved and we think about. And again, if you just make a mistake, just like say sorry and don't get defensive. And I think that that's a big lesson, as simple as that is. I think some people don't want to try because they're confused, which is fine, or they don't want to make a mistake, but just chill out, just talk to someone, ask them.
I think it's about education too. I think the more information that's out there for folks to understand what the pronouns are, how to use them, why they're important to people outside of our community, I think that'll go a long way as well, because it's the education process. And the more that we educate folks and, you know, let them know that it's okay to ask questions. You know, I might not have all the answers, but I can point you somewhere that might. You know, I have a best friend who lives on the shoreline, and she took her daughter to the library, and there was all these queer buttons and pins all over the library, and they were identifying different flags, and she was taking pictures, and she was asking me, how do I explain this to my daughter? She's 9 years old. So I sent her a link to a website that dumbed it down for kids and said, have Uncle Bruno answer any of these questions for you, and they're fine with it.
Yeah.
It's all about the education and informing.
Right. And whereas, like, I'm still learning. I'm a member of the LGBT community, but I'm still learning. I have kids that are 19 and 20-year-olds, and they come home and they say, well, you know, this person is non-binary or cisgender. And I'm like, wait, what is that? Let me do some research so I can be educated too, so I can have conversations with other people when they come up again. So I'm constantly still learning. And I know it'll be a forever learning process as things change and people evolve and figure out new ways of gender expression and sexual orientations. Like it's always going to evolve, and you're never going to be an expert at it. But you have to also, like you said, be humble enough to apologize. And if someone makes a mistake, just have the conversation and, you know, don't kill them for it.
Welcoming space. So Rick, you're a marketer. Pronouns matter.
Yes. So what's the question here? Are we talking about creating a more kind of inclusive business environment? Is that what we're saying?
Yes, very much so. A friendly business environment.
Yeah, I think it's just having spaces to be able to, I mean, we've kind of spoke to this already, but having the space that allows people to speak and listen, right? And those who normally don't speak up to these points that we're talking about today are probably because they're used to not having space to speak, right? They usually have to go in certain safe places to speak up. And I think if as a wider community, we engage just like what we're doing here right now, and just have conversations and allow the wider community to listen and to engage and ask questions and sincerely just have an authentic conversation back and forth, we'll learn so much from each other that nothing truly is binary, from self-identity to, you know, sexual expression and so on. Everything in my mind is a gradient, right? And we all fall somewhere on spectrums, and that can move. And I think if we talk to more people, we listen to more people, we'll hear that, we'll see that, we'll understand that, and we can empathize from there, you know?
Great. Well, we're going to be wrapping up in just a moment here. I wanted to give all of you, our panelists, done a terrific job this morning. Sort of your last final thoughts and maybe a projection for the future and your wishes. And then certainly would encourage anybody to share a recording of this webinar that we're doing today with family, with friends, and other business associates as well. We've covered a lot of ground here this morning. So I think in closing, I think I'd like to start actually as I began with the panel, going from Bruno, Rick, to Denise, to Alex, in that order. Certainly things are changing, and Gen Z is a great example of that, where rapidly changing in terms of identifying and understanding sexuality and identification. And looking at the future, 5 or 10 years down the road, what would be your wish? What would be your hope? What would you like to see if we were to come back and have this conversation here that we're having today on this anniversary of the Stonewall Uprising? What would be your wish in 10 years that you'd like to see? Bruno, I'll start with you.
Put me on the spot.
That's what I'm here for.
I don't know. It's a loaded question, but, you know, again, I'd like to see progress. I'd like to see a little more assimilation and folks being open to and accepting of all people. I think that, you know, we're at a very tumultuous place in time in this country, and we're going backwards in a lot of areas. And, you know, my wish for 10 years is that we get past this and we are this, not utopian, but you know, we are respectful of others and respectful of who they are and how they live their lives.
Great. Thank you, Rick.
So I'm pretty optimistic about the future in general. I think while over the last 5 or so years, it felt for a bunch of folks like a swing back to very different ways of being and thinking. I think that is just a ramification of progress being made, that more people want to be heard who don't understand, who are confused. And I think with the younger generation coming up now, Gen Z, 5-10 years from now, their voices will really be heard even more. Millennial generation, hello, a little bit older, kind of running things from a higher level, right? I think progress is being made all around. I think hearing all voices of all sides, even dissent against progress, has to be heard so that it could be understood. And I'm optimistic that that is happening.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for your comments. And Denise Kennedy, you had some interesting observations, great observations today. Some of your final thoughts.
So like I said, I live in a house with a 19 and a 20-year-old, and they are fearless change makers. I am hoping that in 10 years, you will never have to self-identify by checking a box ever again. You'll just be who you are. And how you identify will not be important.
Great, thanks. And Alex.
Yeah, I think first I just want to say for right now, any business, since we're talking about Pride Month, and I think we all kind of run business organizations, but any business that you want to see survive in 10 years, support it. Whether that is a queer business, a women-owned business, a Black-owned business. People are like, oh, I'm so sad that store closed. I loved it. It's like, well, how often did you shop at it? I think that the diversity of businesses and the people running them really create a village type atmosphere. I'm in a Westville Village. I love those different types of people, but if you want to see in 10 years Strange Ways exists, like shop at it. If you want to see your local bakery survive, you have to support it. And I guess I just kind of want to end with that. I would hope that maybe things that marginalize people, or not marginalize, that like separate people from coming in. I mean, I have a big rainbow door on the outside. Maybe people aren't coming in because of that right now, but I'm hoping in 10 years that won't be an issue at all. But for right now, there is kind of a barrier. I'm sure some people don't walk into our store because of that. And so I hope in 10 years, it's not as big of a deal and we're just a store. But for right now, if you see someone with a rainbow flag, please support them, because hopefully in 10 years, they'll still be there.
Thank you, Alex. And thank you all for participating. And thanks for all of you joining us here today. I'd like our panelists to stay with us for just a moment. I'm just going to wrap up, take care of a few closing remarks before we discharge for the day. I do want to mention a couple of upcoming events we have here at the Greater New Haven Chamber of Commerce and the Quinnipiac Chamber of Commerce. Big event on July 13th on that afternoon at Amarante's Seacliff right here. We're getting back together. We're getting back in person. We're seeing each other, glass of wine in hand or whatever else you like to drink. We're socializing. It feels great to be back together. Coming up on July 13th, we have the Greater New Haven Chamber of Commerce Annual Healthcare and Life Sciences Award. And we're presented by Harvard Pilgrim Healthcare. It'll be out at Anthony's that day too. Presenting sponsor as well, Yale New Haven Health. You can register right online, gnhcc.com for that event. We have some great awards that we're going to be giving out in our healthcare sectors, biotech, booming around New Haven. Coming up on July 17th, we do have the Quinnipiac Chamber of Commerce, presented by Ulbrich Stainless Steels at the Best Western, right off of Exit 1291 in North Haven, the 3rd Annual Quinnipiac Chamber of Commerce Manufacturing Career Fair. There are lots of jobs available, and many manufacturers, at least 24 will be there that day. And we welcome you to stop by. It's a free event to attend from 9 to 1 on Saturday, July 17th. You can register at quincham.com. And for those of you who like to get out your general half-track ugly golf pants and skirts and shorts, coming up on August 16th, we have our golf tournament, 37th Annual Quinnipiac Chamber of Commerce Golf Classic at the Beautiful Farms Country Club, presented by C. Coles and Company that day. You can register too. It's a noon shotgun start, and that's at quincham.com. I once again would love to thank our panelists for their participation and all that they have done with us here today. Bruna Baguetta, Marketing Communications Director, Market New Haven, thank you. Rick Callahan, Founder and CEO of Creative. Rick, thank you for being with us today. Denise Kennedy, Chief Compliance Officer of Marrakech, and also Alex Dacoulis, his shops at Westville, and online founder and creative director of Strange Ways. Thank you all for being with us here today. We want to thank you for joining us as well. Join us anytime you like, right online. Be our 100th subscriber. The Greater New Haven Chamber of Commerce. You can view past webinars on topics, wide-ranging business support, how it's going up in Hartford and Washington with the economy, other topics as too that we have developed through our webinars on our YouTube page. Thanks for being with us here today. Thanks for the conversation. Hope everybody has a great day.